Dark City premiered 1 year before The Matrix, yet Roger Ebert called it superior to the Wachowski sisters' blockbuster. From editing cuts every 1.8 seconds to Kiefer Sutherland thinking the script was meant for his father, this neo-noir sci-fi film harbors secrets as twisted as its reality-bending plot. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Dark City. Hyperspeed editing record. Dark City holds one of the most extreme editing records in modern cinema, with an average shot length of just 1.8 seconds, which means there's literally a cut almost every 2 seconds throughout the entire film. To put this in perspective, most mainstream movies from the 1990s typically had average shot lengths between 4 to 8 seconds, making Dark City's editing style incredibly aggressive and almost unprecedented for its time. This hyperkinetic cutting approach wasn't an accident or the result of post-production panic, but rather a deliberate artistic choice by director Alex Proyas to create a specific psychological effect on viewers. The constant stream of rapid cuts was designed to mirror the disorienting and unstable nature of the reality that the main character, John Murdoch, experiences throughout the story, where nothing stays the same and everything shifts without warning. The editing technique serves multiple purposes within the film's narrative structure, helping to convey the sense that something is fundamentally wrong with the world the characters inhabit. When you're watching someone navigate a reality that's being constantly manipulated and rearranged by mysterious forces, the relentless pace of cuts makes the audience feel that same sense of unease and confusion that the protagonist experiences. This editing approach was particularly bold for a film released in 1998, when most science fiction movies relied on longer, more traditional shot compositions to showcase their elaborate set designs and special effects. Instead of letting viewers linger on the impressive Gothic cityscape and noir atmosphere, Proyas chose to keep everything moving at breakneck speed, creating an almost subliminal effect where the audience processes the visual information the same way the memory-wiped characters process their fragmented experiences. The technique proved so effective that it became one of the film's most distinctive technical achievements, setting it apart from other science fiction films of the era. Matrix set recycling. When Dark City finished filming at Fox Studios Australia in 1997, the production team made a business decision that would create one of the most fascinating connections in science fiction cinema history by selling several of their elaborate set pieces to Warner Brothers for use in The Matrix, which was scheduled to film at the same Australian studio location just 1 year later. The most recognizable recycled elements were the distinctive corrugated metal rooftops that featured prominently in Dark City's nighttime chase sequences, which eagle-eyed viewers can spot again during Trinity's famous opening rooftop chase scene in The Matrix. Both films were shot at Fox Studios Australia, which made this practical arrangement possible and cost-effective for the studios involved. The rooftop sets weren't the only shared elements between the two productions, as The Matrix also reused the black and white checkered tile staircase that appeared in Dark City, which can be seen during the SWAT team raid sequence and Morpheus's capture scene in the later film. This set recycling arrangement was particularly ironic, given that both films explored nearly identical themes about characters discovering that their perceived reality was actually an artificial construct controlled by non-human entities. While The Matrix became a massive global phenomenon and cultural touchstone, Dark City had explored these same reality-bending concepts a full year earlier, using some of the exact same physical locations and set pieces. The shared sets created an unusual situation where audiences watching both films would essentially be seeing the same architectural spaces used to tell two different stories about simulated realities and characters awakening to the truth about their manipulated worlds. The practical necessity of reusing expensive set construction became an unintentional bridge between two films that would later be frequently compared and analyzed for their similar philosophical themes and visual approaches to depicting artificial realities controlled by mysterious forces. Kiefer's casting confusion. When Kiefer Sutherland first received the script for Dark City in the mid-1990s, he genuinely believed that someone in the casting department had made an embarrassing mistake, and that the production team actually wanted to hire his famous father, Donald Sutherland, for the role of the mysterious Dr. Daniel Schreiber. This confusion wasn't entirely unreasonable, considering that Donald Sutherland was already a well-established Hollywood legend known for his work in films like The Dirty Dozen and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, while Kiefer was still building his career and hadn't yet become the household name he would later become through television's 24/4. The mix-up seemed logical to Kiefer because the character of Dr. Schreiber was originally conceived as an older man, and director Alex Proyas had initially approached other veteran actors for the role, including William Hurt, who was ultimately cast as Inspector Bumstead instead. Ben Kingsley was also among the original choices being considered for the eccentric scientist character, which would have made the role more age-appropriate for someone like Donald Sutherland. However, Alex Proyas deliberately chose to make Dr. Schreiber younger than originally planned because he felt that a younger character would have more compelling reasons to rebel against the alien strangers who controlled the city. This creative decision worked perfectly for Kiefer's casting, as his naturally nervous energy and distinctive speaking style brought a unique interpretation to the twitchy, paranoid scientist who serves as both collaborator and secret saboteur. The role ended up becoming one of Kiefer Sutherland's most memorable performances, with his Peter Lorre-inspired portrayal of the limping, cowardly German scientist becoming a standout element of the film. Ironically, what began as a perceived casting error resulted in one of the most distinctive character performances in science fiction cinema of the 1990s. Real psychiatric patient inspiration. The character of Dr. Daniel Schreiber in Dark City wasn't just a fictional creation, but was actually named after and inspired by a real German judge named Daniel Paul Schreiber, who lived from 1842 to 1911 and became one of the most famous psychiatric patients in medical history. The historical Daniel Paul Schreiber suffered from what doctors at the time diagnosed as narcissistic and paranoid psychosis, along with what would likely be classified today as schizophrenia, and his condition led to multiple lengthy stays in psychiatric hospitals during the late 1800s and early 1900s. What made the real Schreiber historically significant was his decision to write a detailed autobiographical account of his mental illness, titled Memoirs of My Nervous Illness, which was published in 1903 and became a groundbreaking document in the field of psychiatry. This memoir provided an unprecedented first-person perspective on severe mental illness, describing Schreiber's elaborate delusions about being transformed into a woman by divine rays and his belief that he was destined to save the world through this transformation. The memoir caught the attention of Sigmund Freud, who wrote an extensive analysis of Schreiber's case in 1911, using it as a foundation for his theories about paranoia and psychosis. Carl Jung also studied Schreiber's writings and incorporated elements of the case into his own psychological theories about the human mind and mental illness. Director Alex Proyas and the screenwriters chose to name their fictional doctor after this historical figure, because both the real and fictional Schreiber dealt with questions of identity, reality, and mental manipulation. The film's Dr. Schreiber, like his historical namesake, exists in a world where the boundaries between reality and delusion become dangerously blurred, making the reference both thematically appropriate and historically respectful to one of psychiatry's most important case studies. Rocky Horror Connection. Director Alex Proyas deliberately wrote the character of Mr. Hand with Richard O'Brien specifically in mind, envisioning the British actor's distinctive physical appearance and performance style as the perfect foundation for the leader of the mysterious strangers. Who controlled Dark City? Proyas explained his casting vision by saying he wanted strange, bald-looking men with an ethereal, androgynous quality. And O'Brien's iconic portrayal of Riff Raff in the Rocky Horror Picture Show had already demonstrated exactly those characteristics that made him ideal for the role. Richard O'Brien had become a cult icon through his dual role as creator, writer, and star of the Rocky Horror Show, the stage musical that became a global phenomenon in the 1970s before being adapted into the beloved film The Rocky Horror Picture Show in 1975. His character Riff Raff, the alien butler with a distinctive hunched posture, pale makeup, and otherworldly mannerisms, had established O'Brien as someone who could convincingly portray non-human characters with unsettling charm and theatrical presence. When Proyas traveled to London during the casting process, he met with O'Brien and immediately recognized that the actor's natural appearance and performance instincts were perfectly suited for the alien entity inhabiting a human corpse. The connection between Riff Raff and Mr. Hand goes beyond just physical similarities, as both characters serve as intermediaries between their respective alien races and the human world, delivering exposition and advancing their species' agenda through manipulative interactions with confused human protagonists. O'Brien's casting proved so effective that after he was hired to play Mr. Hand, all the other actors who were cast as the various strangers throughout the film were specifically instructed to match his particular performance style and mannerisms. This direction created a unified otherworldly presence among all the stranger characters, making them feel like members of the same alien species rather than individual human actors playing separate roles. Child twins. Head shaving. The character of Mr. Sleep, one of the most unsettling members of the alien strangers in Dark City, was actually played by fraternal twins named Satya and Noah Gumbert, a boy and a girl who were both required to completely shave off their hair to achieve the eerie, androgynous appearance that the role demanded. This head-shaving requirement was necessary because the strangers were designed to look identical and otherworldly, with their bald heads and pale skin creating a uniform alien presence that would be instantly recognizable as non-human to audiences. The production team initially had serious concerns about working with child actors on such a dark and complex science fiction film, especially given the disturbing nature of the scenes the twins would need to perform and the physical transformation required for the role. However, these worries quickly disappeared once the casting directors discovered that both Satya and Noah were enormous fans of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which made them incredibly excited about the opportunity to work alongside Richard O'Brien, who played the lead, stranger character Mr. Hand. The twins' enthusiasm for Rocky Horror turned what could have been a challenging situation into one of the most positive casting experiences on the entire production. Their genuine excitement about meeting and working with O'Brien, combined with their natural understanding of theatrical and campy performance styles, made them perfect for the role of the creepy, childlike alien entity. The decision to use twins for the single character allowed the filmmakers greater flexibility during shooting, as they could alternate between the two children depending on the specific requirements of each scene, while also ensuring that one twin could serve as a body double for the other when needed. Both children approached their head shaving and the demanding performance requirements with remarkable professionalism and genuine enthusiasm that impressed the entire cast and crew throughout the filming process. Studio's Too Weird R rating. The Motion Picture Association of America gave Dark City an R rating in 1998 for one of the most unusual reasons in cinema history, with the ratings board essentially declaring that the film's concept was simply too weird for a PG-13 certification, despite the fact that the movie contained very little content that would typically warrant a restricted rating. The film only included a few brief shots of topless women that lasted just seconds in total, along with some violence and dark themes, but nothing that hadn't appeared in countless PG-13 rated films before and since. The MPAA's decision to cite the film's weird concept as grounds for an R rating was practically unprecedented and highlighted the ratings board's discomfort with science fiction stories that challenged conventional narrative structures and explored complex philosophical themes about reality and human consciousness. This reasoning suggested that the ratings board was more concerned about the film's challenging ideas and unconventional storytelling approach than any specific visual content that might be inappropriate for younger audiences. The R rating proved to be a significant commercial obstacle for Dark City, as it prevented the film from reaching the broader teenage audience that typically drives science fiction box office success. Studios generally prefer PG-13 ratings for genre films because they allow access to the crucial 13 to 17-year-old demographic, which represents a substantial portion of moviegoers who are drawn to science fiction and fantasy content. Director Alex Proyas later reflected that this experience with the MPAA was frustrating because it demonstrated how the rating system could penalize films for being intellectually challenging or artistically ambitious, rather than focusing solely on content that might be genuinely harmful to younger viewers. The "too weird" designation became an ironic badge of honor for the film among critics and fans who appreciated its willingness to explore complex themes that other mainstream science fiction films avoided. Roger Ebert's unique commentary. Roger Ebert's passion for Dark City was so extraordinary that he broke his own long-standing policy about recording DVD commentary tracks, ultimately providing feature-length commentaries for both the original 1998 DVD release and the director's cut that came out 10 years later in 2008. This level of commitment was virtually unprecedented for the legendary Chicago Sun-Times film critic, who during his entire career only recorded complete commentary tracks for a total of 6 films, making Dark City one of the most exclusive titles to receive this honor. Ebert's decision to spend hours analyzing Dark City frame by frame demonstrated his belief that the film represented something truly special in modern cinema, worthy of the kind of detailed academic examination typically reserved for acknowledged masterpieces. His commentary tracks weren't just casual observations about the filmmaking process, but rather in-depth explorations of the movie's themes, visual symbolism, and philosophical implications, treating it with the same intellectual rigor he applied to classics like Citizen Kane or 2001: A Space Odyssey. The critics' enthusiasm for the film extended beyond just recording commentary tracks, as he also used Dark City extensively in his teaching at the University of Chicago and conducted a famous frame-by-frame analysis of the entire movie over 4 days at the Hawaii Film Festival in October of 2005. During these educational sessions, Ebert would literally freeze individual frames and discuss their composition, meaning, and connection to other works of cinema with audiences who shared his curiosity about the film's deeper layers. Ebert's dedication to promoting and analyzing Dark City played a crucial role in establishing the film's reputation as a cult classic and serious work of science fiction cinema, helping it gain recognition and appreciation that it hadn't received during its disappointing original theatrical run. Jennifer Connelly's dubbed voice. Jennifer Connelly's singing performance in Dark City underwent a surprising change between the original theatrical release and the director's cut that was released 10 years later, revealing an unusual decision by the filmmakers to replace her natural voice with professional dubbing for reasons that remain somewhat mysterious. In the original 1998 theatrical version, all of Emma Murdoch's singing scenes at the jazz club were performed by professional vocalist Anita Kelsey, who provided a polished, technically perfect vocal performance that matched the sophisticated nightclub atmosphere the filmmakers were trying to create. However, when director Alex Proyas assembled his director's cut in 2008, he made the decision to restore Jennifer Connelly's original recorded vocals, allowing audiences to hear her actual singing voice for the first time. The difference between the two versions is quite noticeable, as Connelly's natural voice has a more raw, emotional quality that lacks the technical precision of a trained professional singer, but provides a much more authentic and personal connection to the character's emotional state. Many fans and critics who have heard both versions actually prefer Connelly's unpolished performance because it feels more genuine and appropriate for the character of Emma, who isn't supposed to be a professional entertainer, but rather an ordinary person who has been assigned the role of nightclub singer by the alien strangers who control the city. Her slightly imperfect vocal technique actually makes more sense within the story's context, since Emma's memories and identity have been artificially constructed, and she wouldn't necessarily have the years of training that would produce a flawless singing voice. The restoration of Connelly's original vocals in the director's cut represents one of many changes that Proyas made to bring the film closer to his original artistic vision, removing studio-imposed modifications that had been made to appeal to broader commercial audiences during the initial theatrical release. Biblical room number secret Roger Ebert discovered one of the most cleverly hidden symbolic details in Dark City when he pointed out during his DVD commentary that John Murdoch's hotel room number 614 was deliberately chosen to reference a specific Bible verse that directly relates to the character's role in the story. The verse, John 6:14, reads, "This is truly the prophet who is to come into the world," which perfectly describes Murdoch's function as the prophesied figure who will eventually free the inhabitants of the city from their alien captors. This biblical reference wasn't just a random coincidence or Easter egg for religious viewers to discover, but rather a carefully planned piece of foreshadowing that hints at Murdoch's true destiny long before the audience understands his significance to the story. When viewers first see Murdoch waking up confused and disoriented in room 614, the room number appears to be just a mundane hotel detail, but it actually serves as a subtle prediction of his eventual transformation into the savior figure who will liberate humanity from the stranger's control. The choice to use this particular biblical verse demonstrates the filmmaker's attention to symbolic detail and their desire to layer multiple levels of meaning throughout the movie for viewers who choose to look more deeply into the story's religious and philosophical themes. The prophet reference is especially appropriate because Murdoch doesn't just escape from his captors like a typical action hero, but instead gains the power to reshape reality itself and create a new world for the other prisoners to inhabit. Ebert's recognition of this hidden biblical connection illustrates his remarkable ability to catch subtle details that other critics and viewers might easily overlook. And it demonstrates how the filmmakers embedded religious symbolism into even the smallest visual elements of their science fiction story to reinforce the themes of spiritual awakening and prophetic revelation that drive the narrative forward. Opening narration. Studio Battle New Line Cinema executives forced director Alex Proyas to add an opening narration voiced by Kiefer Sutherland to the beginning of Dark City, despite Proyas's strong objections that this explanatory voiceover would ruin the mystery and surprise elements that were central to the film's appeal. The studio was concerned that general audiences would not understand the complex science fiction concepts and reality-bending plot without having the basic premise explained to them up front, so they insisted on including narration that essentially spoiled several major plot reveals before the story even began. Proyas later recalled that this was the first time in his filmmaking career that studio executives had explicitly told him to dumb it down for audiences, marking a frustrating moment when commercial concerns overrode artistic integrity. The director felt strongly that the film's power came from allowing viewers to discover the truth about the city and its inhabitants alongside the protagonist, rather than being told the answers before they had a chance to experience the mystery themselves. The opening narration explains that the strangers are aliens conducting experiments on humans, reveals that the city changes every night, and describes the memory implantation process, effectively eliminating much of the suspense that drives the first half of the movie. Test screenings had apparently shown that some viewers were confused by the film's unconventional narrative structure, leading nervous executives to demand the addition of explanatory material. When Proyas finally got the opportunity to create his director's cut in 2008, the very first change he made was removing the entire opening narration sequence, allowing the film to begin as he had originally intended, with John Murdoch waking up in the hotel bathtub without any prior explanation. This restoration transformed the viewing experience back into the mysterious journey of discovery that Proyas had envisioned from the beginning. Building movement inspiration. The most visually spectacular and memorable element of Dark City, the scenes where entire buildings grow, shift, and morph into new configurations came to Alex Proyas through a surprisingly mundane moment of inspiration while he was directing his previous film, The Crow, in 1994. During the production of that gothic superhero movie, Proyas was working on a rooftop set that required frequent reconfiguration to create different background environments for various scenes throughout the filming schedule. Between takes, Proyas would watch the crew members physically moving smaller-scale building pieces around the set to change the skyline and create new urban landscapes behind the actors, and this practical filmmaking necessity sparked an idea that would become central to Dark City's visual concept. He began imagining what it would look like if real buildings could move and reshape themselves with the same ease that his crew was rearranging the miniature set pieces, transforming entire cityscapes in a matter of moments. This observation evolved into one of the core visual metaphors for Dark City, where the alien strangers use their psychokinetic powers to physically restructure the city's architecture every night at midnight, growing new buildings from the ground up and reshaping existing structures to create different living environments for their human test subjects. The building transformation sequences became some of the most technically challenging and visually impressive effects in the entire film, requiring complex miniature work and early computer graphics to bring Proyas's vision to life. The irony of this inspiration is that what began as a practical solution to a low-budget filmmaking problem on The Crow evolved into one of the most expensive and elaborate special effects sequences in Dark City, demonstrating how creative directors can transform simple observations about the filmmaking process into powerful storytelling elements that serve both visual spectacle and narrative meaning. Alternative casting mayhem. The casting process for Dark City involved a complicated series of role switches and alternative choices that completely reshuffled which actors ended up playing which characters, creating one of the most unusual casting stories in science fiction cinema history. William Hurt, who ultimately delivered a memorable performance as the confused and increasingly suspicious Inspector Frank Bumstead, was originally approached by director Alex Proyas to play the very different role of Dr. Daniel Schreiber, the twitchy scientist who helps the alien strangers conduct their memory experiments on human subjects. When Hurt declined the opportunity to play Dr. Schreiber, the filmmakers continued their search for the right actor to portray the nervous, morally conflicted scientist character, and Ben Kingsley emerged as another top choice for the role. Kingsley, who had already established himself as a versatile character actor capable of playing both sympathetic and villainous roles, was seriously considered for the part that would eventually go to Kiefer Sutherland after his own casting confusion was resolved. The decision to recast Hurt as Inspector Bumstead instead of Dr. Schreiber actually worked out perfectly for the film's overall dynamic, because Hurt's naturally calm and methodical acting style was much better suited to playing a detective who slowly begins to question the reality around him than it would have been for the high-strung, paranoid scientist character. Bumstead needed to be portrayed as someone who approaches problems logically and systematically, making Hurt's understated performance style ideal for showing the character's gradual awakening to the truth about his artificial world. Meanwhile, the character of Dr. Schreiber was originally conceived as an older man, but Alex Proyas ultimately decided that making the character younger would provide more compelling motivation for his eventual rebellion against the strangers, which opened the door for Kiefer Sutherland's memorable interpretation of the role that became one of his most distinctive film performances. Hidden Hal 9000 reference. Roger Ebert discovered one of the most cleverly hidden visual references in Dark City when he pointed out during his commentary that the very first shot of the film deliberately evokes the iconic appearance of HAL 9000 from Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey. The opening sequence shows the camera approaching John Murdoch's hotel window from the outside, and the window's design features a circular dome set within a rectangular frame that unmistakably resembles the distinctive red eye of the famous artificial intelligence from Kubrick's science fiction masterpiece. This visual connection wasn't just a coincidence or a random homage to a classic film, but rather a carefully planned reference that establishes thematic links between the two movies from the very first moments of Dark City. HAL 9000 was an artificial intelligence that understood everything about human behavior and technology, but remained fundamentally incapable of comprehending human emotions and the essence of what makes people truly human, which is exactly the same limitation that drives the alien strangers throughout Dark City's story. The strangers conduct their elaborate experiments on human subjects because they desperately want to understand the human soul, heart, or whatever mysterious quality allows humans to experience love, creativity, and genuine emotion. Like HAL 9000, they possess incredible power and intelligence, but lack the very thing that defines humanity, making them unable to truly comprehend or replicate the human experience no matter how extensively they study their subjects. Ebert's recognition of this visual reference demonstrates how Alex Proyas and his team embedded multiple layers of meaning into even the smallest details of their film, connecting Dark City to the broader tradition of science fiction stories that explore the fundamental differences between artificial intelligence and human consciousness. The HAL 9000 reference serves as an immediate signal to attentive viewers that they're about to watch a story that grapples with similar philosophical questions about consciousness and humanity. Stranger's performance direction. Once Richard O'Brien was officially cast as Mr. Hand, the leader of the alien strangers, director Alex Proyas made the unusual decision to use O'Brien's distinctive performance style as the template for all the other actors who would be playing the various stranger characters throughout the film. This meant that actors like Ian Richardson, who played Mr. Book, Bruce Spence, who played Mr. Wall, and all the other performers cast as members of the Alien Collective were specifically instructed to study and mirror O'Brien's particular mannerisms, speech patterns, and physical movements. This directing approach was quite different from the typical method of allowing each actor to develop their own individual interpretation of their character, but it served a crucial purpose in creating the illusion that all the strangers were part of the same alien species, rather than separate human actors playing different roles. O'Brien's naturally theatrical and otherworldly performance style, which had been perfected through years of playing riffraff in the Rocky Horror Show, provided the perfect foundation for creating a unified alien presence that would feel genuinely non-human to audiences. The result of this coordinated performance direction was that all the strangers moved, spoke, and behaved in subtly similar ways that suggested they shared the same alien consciousness or hive mind mentality. Their synchronized mannerisms, identical speech rhythms, and matching body language created an unsettling effect that made them seem like different manifestations of the same otherworldly intelligence rather than individual beings with distinct personalities. This performance coordination extended beyond just copying O'Brien's acting style to include matching vocal delivery patterns, similar physical postures, and even coordinated timing in their movements and gestures. The unified approach helped establish that the strangers were parasitic entities inhabiting human corpses rather than actual humans, making their collective alien nature immediately apparent to viewers through their eerily synchronized behavior patterns.